Okay, so we all have those days where things just don't work quite right. And yesterday morning, I guess that was my day for this lesson. I tried recording this before church services and thought it was saved and everything, and couldn't find it anywhere this morning when I went to upload it. So I'm going to do it again while you're at specials. So instead of jumping into our mid-chapter checkpoint, we're going to do a review over all three of these lessons. I want to do that because as I graded 6.2 and 6.3 this weekend, some of you just did not do well, and most of us because you didn't have any kind of setup whatsoever on your assignment. I will contribute that to the idea that you're not watching the videos and listening to me, because I do know that I talk a lot, but it's because I explain things in detail so that you'll understand it better. And then some of it may just because there's so many steps you got a little confused. So I'm going to try to minimize all the different steps into focusing into two different aspects of it. The first aspect, we're going to focus in on the customary measurements, but we're going to do all three. We're going to look at length, and we're going to look at capacity, and we're going to look at weight all together with the same setup every time. Then we're going to step away from having to do that setup and just look at the stair steps when it comes to King Hector and the metric system. I do believe that that is the easiest way to do the metric system conversion. So I want to focus in on that. If you want to do the normal setup, knowing what you're starting with and what you're going to for metric also, please do. I'm not going to make you do it something different. As long as you're showing work to get that point before you give me an answer. But we also have to have labels, which is where a lot of you are missing points. So if I'm doing just the standard length, volume, or weight, I have to know what I have, and I have to know what I'm going to. Those are my two things to my setup, and you got to learn that. We have to commit that to memory. It's why I said it over and over and over again on my videos last week. Then, when I'm setting it up, I'm going to create two fractions out of those two things. What I have is always going to go over 1. It's going to be a multiplication problem. And then I'm going to have what I'm converting or how I'm converting at the bottom. Now, the key to that is understanding that that conversion, these have to be the same labels. That's the only way I cross-reduce them and convert to what I'm going to. If this is not the same label as this, it is not going to work. So going through these, if I have 27 feet, how many inches do I have? How many yards do I have? So I've given you papers that have all of these questions. You need to follow along, fill them out, and do every step that I show you. These conversions and setups are on your paper for you to look at on every one. Make sure you show the steps so that when you do your assignment, this is an easy assignment to get an A on, and our grades can start going back up. I have to know what I'm going, or what I have and what I'm going to, and then what conversion set I'm going to use. If I have 27 feet, how many inches do I have? I have to use the conversions of foot and inches. If I know I'm using that one, then I start with, what do I have? I have 27 feet. What am I going to? So I start building my two fractions. I'm going to inches, so I know my feet has to be down below. Well, how do I know what number goes with that? That's when my customary units box comes into play. It tells me for every 1 foot I have 12 inches. So I know that my 1 has to go down here because my inches has to be up here because that's what I'm going to. What I'm going to has to be on top. So if I have 12 inches for every 1 foot, I have my setup. It's always multiplication. If my numbers are there straight across from each other, I just multiply. If they're diagonal, then I know I'm going to divide. But when I multiply straight across, I'm just left with cross-reducing my labels and getting rid of it. Now I have converted it to inches, which is what I'm going to, and I multiply 27 times 12. 27 times 12 is 324. Can't tell you how many of you miss points because your answer lines are blank. I have to have a number and I have to have a label. This answer line's worth 2 points. The work is worth 1 point. 324 inches is my correct answer. Has to be complete. Be effective and take your time and do it correctly, and you'll be great at this. And then the second part of the question is, well, how many yards do I have if I have 27 feet? Same setup. I start with what I have, and then I know what I'm going to. I once again have 27 feet. What am I going to? Going to be on top. Well, I'm going to yards. And I know I have to have feet down here below so that I can convert. Well, what's my unit that I'm going to use? This one tells me yards to feet. Then for every 1 yard, I have 3 feet. Okay, I can plug that information in, knowing that if feet is here, I have to get rid of feet down here by having it down at the bottom. So feet and feet, that tells me my conversion is what? Well, I have 1 yard and 3 feet. So my 3 has to be at the bottom, my 1 has to be at the top. When I go to do the math then, I know it's a fraction that I'm multiplying with. I can cross reduce my labels, and then I multiply across. Well, when I multiply across, I could say, well, can't I cross reduce my 9 or my 3 and my 27? You can, and that's fine. Or you could just multiply across and get 27 times 1 yard, which is 27 yards, and 1 times 3, which is 3. Either way, we end up reducing because I have to convert that. I can't leave it as an improper fraction. And converting just means I divide the numerator by the denominator, and 27 divided by 3 gives me 9. On my answer line, 2 points. I have to have that it's equal to 9. 9 what? I'm going to yards, so my answer has to be 9 yards. Well, what if I have a question like this? I need 100 yards of rope to go across the football field because the football field's 100 yards. But the sale at the store is only advertised per inch. How many inches do I need? And at 5% per foot, how much will it cost? And when I look at that chart, I don't have a conversion to use. So I'm going to start with going from 1 yard to 3 feet. Okay, so if I know that I'm going to go from feet to yards, then I'm going to go from my foot to inches. I'm going to do 2 conversions here, a 2-step conversion. Starting with what I have 100 yards. Well, what am I going to? Well, I can't jump right into inches. So I'm going to jump into going to feet, and then I'll go from feet to inches. So what I'm going to is my feet, and I know my yards has to be down here for that conversion to happen. So if I have 100 yards, and I'm multiplying it by what then? Well, how many feet are in a yard? There are 3 feet for every 1 yard. That tells me it's a multiplication problem going straight across. Okay, so how many yards or feet do I have? I cross reduce my yards and get rid of it, and then I'm just left with 100 times 3. Basic math multiplication. 3 times 100 is 300. That's pretty easy. But I have to go to the next step. I have to change it now into inches. So this is a 2-step conversion, but it's the same setup. I just show my second one. So now going from feet to inches, I go to that one where it says 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. I know my feet has to be on the bottom because it's what I'm starting with. And at the top, I need to go to inches, so I have to have my inch label at the top. And my ratio or my unit rate is that for every 1 foot, there's 12 inches. So the 12 has to go on top. That leaves me with multiplication again. Handy dandy calculator, 300 times 12 gives me what? Well, when I cross reduce my labels and get rid of them, I'm left with 300 times 12 inches. So I know it's 3,600 inches. 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer line, 2 points, is 3,600 inches. That's how many inches I have. But there's another space, isn't there, with a line? What's that for? Well, that's for the next one. At 5 cents per foot, how much will it cost? So what conversion rate am I going to use on that one? Well, we're going from a distance to a money, so there really isn't one, is there? Well, not in that chart, but there is in the problem. This is a conversion rate. I know that for every 1 foot, I'm spending 5 cents. So that lets me convert it into a money amount that I know I have to spend. So if I have 3,600 inches, what I'm starting with, and I'm spending 5 cents for every, well, it should be inch, by the way, not foot. 5 cents for every inch that I'm going to buy, then I put my 5 cents up above. I'm going to cross reduce my inches and get rid of them, which tells me that all I'm left with is multiplying my 3,600 inches by 5 cents that I'm paying for every inch that I buy. And so 3,600 typed into my handy dandy calculator times 0.05, it's a pretty easy math problem because I get 180. 180 what? Well, my label is just dollars. So I know I would spend $180 if for every inch of yarn or rope that I buy, it's 5 cents per inch. Once again, that should say inch, and I apologize. I didn't double check that problem. All right, so now we're going to go to capacities. Capacities work the exact same way. My goat gives 10 quarts of milk a day. How many gallons does that give me each day? How many pints does that give me each day? So I have to do my conversion rates. My conversion rates on your paper for you are there. And I have to figure out what I have and what I'm going to every time. What I have is 10 quarts. What I'm going to first is gallons. And this tells me there are 4 quarts for every gallon. So I do my setup. What I have, 10 quarts. What I'm going to, well, down below, I have to have quarts, so they will cross-reduce. And for every 4 quarts, I have 1 gallon, which is what I'm going to, so my gallon has to be up above. And if there's 4 quarts for every gallon, then I have to fill it in, 1 to 4, and I know I'm multiplying. Now I can multiply across, or I can divide, cross-reduce. But I'm going to start by getting rid of these labels so they're not there. That's why it's able to convert to gallons. So I'm left with 10 times 1 gallon, which is going to give me 10 gallons, over 4, because 1 times 4 is 4. That's a division problem once again. And when I divide, numerator by denominator, 4 goes into 10 2 times with a remainder of 2. I drop the 0 and add a decimal, so 4 goes to 25. So I'm talking about 2.5 gallons, 2.5 gallons. You can do it as a fraction or a decimal. Either way, I count it correct. So 2.5 or 2.5 gallons would give me my 2 points on my answer line. The second one then is changing it into pints. So once again, what do I have? I have 10 quarts. What am I going to? I'm going to pints. I have to find the conversion on my table, and it says for every 2 pints is 1 quart. I have 10 quarts. So I know my quarts has to go down below so I can get rid of it, and that said there was 1 quart for every 2 pints, and the pints has to go up above because that's what I'm going to. So my numbers, when I fill them in, have to be 1 and 2 pints, because it says there are 2 pints for every 1 quart. I know that it's a multiplication, which allows me to cross-reduce my labels. That's how I'm able to convert it into pints, by getting rid of those labels of quarts. And I'm left with 10 times 2. Well, 10 times 2 is just 20. So it's the same as saying that I have 20 pints. 2 labels, or 1 label and 1 answer, 2 points, and then showing your work is your third point. Carrying that on into the next question, dealing with capacity. Well, if I milk my goat for 2 weeks prior to the fair, I can sell the goat for $3, or the goat's milk, for $3 per pint, or $1.75 per cup. So those are 2 unit rates that I can use. Which is my best choice, though? Prove your answer. So I'm either going to sell it per pint or I'm going to sell it per cup, but I want to see which one gives me the most money. So I have 2 problems I have to solve here. So if I have 20 pints, I want to see, well, what is that if I sell it for $3 per pint? So when I do my setup, I'm going to have 20 pints, but where did that problem come from? Well, if I read it, it says that if I milk my goat for 2 weeks, so I can't just jump in with my 20 pints. I have to realize that there's 20 pints per day, 14 days in 2 weeks. So I multiply those together and get 280. That's what I'm starting with. So I start with 280 pints. And when I have my 280 pints and I change it into $3 per pint, then I know my pints goes down below and I'm going to have $3 at the top, because that's my conversion. I cross-reduce my labels of pints and get rid of it. I'm left with 280 times $3. And 280 times $3 gives me $840. So if I sell it per pint, I would make $840. That sounds pretty good. Is it the best? I don't know. I got to see what it is in cups also. So I'm going to take my same 280, because that's what I'm starting with, but I'm going to change it to cups. And it tells me for every 1 pint, I have 2 cups. All right, well, if I know I have my 280 pints, because we already did that calculation for the 2 weeks of milking, and I want to change it into money. Well, for 280 pints, and I go, oh, pints has to go down below so I can cross-reduce it. And the money has to go up above. Well, I'm using the second amount. Well, no, I can't use my second amount yet, can I? Because it says it's per cup. So I have to change it to cups. So this is going to be one of those 2-step conversions. Changing it to cups first, I know that for cups, I have 2 cups for every pint. So I know my 1 has to go with my pints and my 2 goes with my cups. I cross-reduce my pints and get rid of them. And then I'm left with 280 times 2. Well, 280 times 2 is 560 cups. All right. Now I can do my money amount because it says $1.75 per cup is what I can sell it for. So if I know I have to get rid of the cups, and it says per cup, that's 1. So I'm going to have my cups down here, my $1.75 up above. I can cross-reduce my cups and get rid of it. I have 560 times $1.75. And when I type that into my handy-dandy calculator, I get $980. Now, the answer came up before it was supposed to. So, that's part of it. But selling it in cups would be my answer because that's going to make me the most money. How do I know? Did I prove it? I did because I solved for pints and I solved for cups. Well, what about weight? Weight works the same way. This is a true story, by the way. My father caught a 69.7-pound catfish at the Broadview campground. He believed that he held the county record. The county record said that the largest catfish for the county was 1,040 ounces. How big was my father's catfish in ounces? And did my father break the record? So I'm going to change my poundage that we have, 69.7, into ounces. And my conversion for weight tells me that for every 1 pound, I have 16 ounces. That one should be pretty easy for our setup. I start with what I have, 69.7 pounds. What I'm going to ounces. So I know that I have to use that top conversion. It's the only pound conversion that they give me. So my pounds has to go below so I can convert it. I know that for every 1 pound, I have 16 ounces, which is what I'm changing to. So what I'm going to is on top. So I have the 1 and the 16. I have multiplication. I get rid of my pounds, and I'm left with multiplying 69.7 times 16. When I multiply those, I get 1115.2 ounces. So 1,115.2 ounces is what that catfish weighed. That catfish literally, its tail was on the ground, and my father held it here, and the mouth of the catfish was up here at his chin. It was pretty big. If this is what his weighed in ounces, then I have to answer the second question. Did my father break the record? And he did. He broke the record for that county. I believe it's Clinton County. So the answer would be yes, because it was bigger than the previous catfish. All right. So now we're going to get to the metric system. The metric system, we're running out of time before specials is up, so I'm hoping to get this all done. Once again, works in 2 different ways. If I'm leaving the king, he's made me feel good about myself. And when I'm leaving the king, I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to feel bigger about myself. But if I'm meeting the king for the first time and I don't know he's a nice king, I get really nervous. And the closer I get, the smaller I feel. So going down the steps to the right always tells me that I'm going from the king and I get bigger. So my decimal shifts 1 time for every step because they're groups of 10. If I'm going to the king, I get smaller and smaller and smaller the more steps that I go, which means that I move my decimal 1 step to the left for every step that I take. This also is on your paper as you work through these problems. Please follow along. If I'm going to do length from decimeters to hectometers, my decimeters is here, and my hectometer is here. So I know I'm going to go up to the left. How many times? I go 1, 2, 3 steps. So I always put my pencil where the decimal is. And if there isn't one, it's always at the end of the number. So I put it behind the 3, and then I make my loops for ever many steps that I went. So I'm going to loop once, I'm going to loop twice, I'm going to loop 3 times. There's not anything there to hold that decimal position. So we ought to know by now I got to put in a 0. So 43 decimeters is the same as 0.043 hectometers. If I'm going the opposite way, I'm going from a decameter down to a millimeter. So my decameter is here and my millimeter is all the way down here. I'm going to the right. Well, how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So I'm going to put my pencil where the decimal is. It's in between the 7 and 5. They actually give me one on this one, and I have to move it 4 times. Going from the king, I move it 4 times to the right. So I shift it 1, 2, 3, 4, and for every step that I took that there isn't a digit there, I just simply insert with zeros. So 7.5 decameters is the same as having 75,000 millimeters because I had to move it 4 times. When I'm doing liters, it's the same way. Notice the only thing that changed was the problems. So I'm going from 1.7 liters to a decaliter. So where's my liter? Well, my liter is my unit rate. King Hector doesn't usually, so that's my liter, my meter, and my gram. And I'm going to go to a decaliter, which is 1 step up, 1 step closer to the king. So I step to the left 1 time. I move my decimal to the left 1 time. 1.7 liters is the same as 0.17 decaliters. Liters work the same way going to the right. If I'm going from kiloliter, I'm going to leave the king, and I'm going to go down to a milliliter, which is all the way at the bottom. How many steps do I take? Well, going from the king down to milliliter, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps down. What direction? To the right. Which way do I move my decimal? To the right. So I'm going to start with my decimal. It's in front of the 5, and I'm going to move it 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and once again, any place that there's not a digit there, I just simply throw a 0 in. Now on these, please make sure you put your comma. If it has more than 4 digits, it's required to have a comma to be a number. So we did distance and we did capacity, but we also had mass, right? The grams works the exact same way. From a gram to a centigram. So I'm going to start with my gram. I'm going to my centigram, and there are 2 steps. Which way? 2 steps going to the right. So I'm going to take my decimal, put it at the end of my 0, and I want to move 2 times. In what direction? To the right, because I'm going away from the king and feeling better about myself. Have to fill in with zeros. So I go from 2,570 grams to 257,000 centigrams. I had to move it 2 times. Make sure you have your comma in between your numbers. But if I'm going to go up to the king from my grams, and I have my grams here, and I'm going up to the king up here, what's that number going to become? Well, going to the king for the first time, I feel smaller about myself. I'm going to the left, 1, 2, 3 steps also. So I'm going to go 3 steps to the left from my decimal, which would be behind the 0. 1, 2, 3. That puts it right between the 2 and the 5. Now here's where some of you miss points because you don't have a proper number. Do not put 2.570 on your paper. It's not a proper number. The only time I have a 0 at the end of a decimal is when it's in the hundredths position, 2 spaces from the decimal, and it's money. This is a money. We're talking about kilograms, talking about weight. So it's just 2.57 kilograms. That is our review. And if we follow along and we know how to set it up, we've got this. This is not a difficult concept. On all of these regular standard units of measurements, what do I have? What am I going to? And down below has to be my converted label. They have to be able to cross-reduce and get rid of them. And then I either multiply or I'm going to multiply and end up having to divide at the end. That's all I got to do. When it comes to metric, I'm either going to go to the right and make my number bigger for however many steps it takes me, or I'm going to go to the left because I'm intimidated by the king, and it's going to make my number smaller. And I'm going to move it that many steps according to the steps that I go. So now you have some worksheet questions that you're going to do for your assignment. This is your assignment. I truly believe that this should be a 100% from everybody because it's not difficult. It's just being willing to pay attention, follow along, and show the steps that I ask. You all can do this and be successful if you're just willing to try.